Session on the biodiversity mandate. In a nutshell, we're going to explore new ways of doing business that drastically reduce the environmental footprints. Now, the need to do business is becoming, within planetary boundaries, is becoming obvious as we're overstepping planetary boundaries, including climate, biodiversity, and carbon. So, to address this urgency, organizations must find ways to reshape their business models. And I would warmly welcome you in the room. It's a great pleasure to have you attending this session. My name is Daniel Halper. I'm the FII Institute Chair Professor of Circular Economy at HEC Paris. And it is a great pleasure to have these outstanding panelists here with us today. So I'm going to start with Florence Bulté. She's Chief Sustainability Officer at Chaloup Group. We have Cyril Gorgeres, CEO at Suez International. We have Manish Pant, all the way from Schneider. He's the Vice Executive President of International Operations. And finally, we have Hassan Sachedina, who's the founder and CEO of Sayari Earth. So in our conversation over the next 45 minutes or so, we'll focus on three main topics. It's going to be biodiversity in business model design. We're going to talk about circular approaches to regenerate nature. And the third topic I would like to explore is, new ways of becoming nature positive. So with that in mind, I would like to open the conversation. And my first question to Hassan actually is, how do you measure biodiversity? What is biodiversity in managerial terms? Like, how can we get traction on it? How do we set objectives?
Thank you so much, Daniel. So in managerial terms, biodiversity refers to the totality of life and all of the interconnections between it. It's an incredibly important and valuable asset for businesses and humanity. It's estimated that the world GDP is around $96 trillion, and up to half of that is directly linked to biodiversity. So just to put that in perspective, this session is 45 minutes. In that time period, about $8 billion worth of goods and services will be generated, and approximately half, around $4 billion of that, will be directly related to biodiversity. In contrast, nature loss refers to, in managerial terms, the depreciation of natural capital as an asset. And it is a significant risk, not just to societies, but businesses and economies. So when we talk about biodiversity and nature loss, what we really have to do is look at, in terms of, you're looking at restoration of what's already been damaged, conservation of what remains, and perhaps most importantly, a sustainable use. This issue around use is so important. So when we talk about metrics, there's, part of the issue is that biodiversity is abstract to many businesses and business people. But one way of looking at it is that if you just look around us, the plywood from this floor, this wall, the leather from our shoes, the linen that we have in our fiber, this water, the oxygen we breathe, the coffee, the food that we're eating, all of this is directly linked to biodiversity. So what we found internally in our own companies, as well as when we have discussions with corporates, is it's always important to start with risks. There's no blueprint for this. It's really important to design these metrics around your own company goals and purpose. And start with risks is what we found, is what are the risks to your own supply chain? And then the opportunities linked to that. The second is really around, and linked to it, is compliance. Not just your own national legislation, but what's happening in other areas that in 2 or 3 years could affect MENA. The EU, for example, is moving very quickly on biodiversity regulation. The other then, of course, is footprinting. What is your own impact? And what we found is quite useful is linking the impact. Could be your water use in a region like MENA, it could be your emissions, to intensity per staff member. And it really helps to ease those discussions with your people and your stakeholders when you're like, how do we reduce our water intensity? And how do we reduce our emissions? Of course, companies, I hope, across the board are now dealing with their Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. And in the next 24 months, I hope everyone has quantified their Scope 3 emissions, as horrifying as it's going to be, because once you factor in Scope 3, it's huge. So there's a number of other different types of metrics which I'm happy to talk about later, but just in a nutshell, those are some initial thoughts.
So now we have a rough idea what biodiversity could be about. So maybe Florence, if you could say how you tackle, you know, biodiversity footprints and environmental footprints more broadly.
Yeah. So just to set a bit of context, Chalhoub Group is a distributor and retailer of luxury products in the Middle East. We've been operating for over 70 years in the region. Turning point was 2014 when we became a member of the United Nations Global Compact. So we developed a sustainability strategy, and our, I would say, planet strategy is really looking at reducing our footprint. So we start with decarbonization strategies, so looking at energy efficiency, shifting to renewable energy, shifting to mobility of our fleet, energy audit, making sure we had the right equipment to optimize our water and electricity consumption. Fast forwarding to 2021, and that was a lot of work, I just want to say, because we didn't have access to data. So data is key, so that's what we first put in place. In 2021, we started to pave the way to our net zero commitment, and we decided to commit to the 3 scopes of emission. And that was, again, a big challenge, because our scope 3 represent 99% of our emission. So now we have our midterm target validated, so we know that we have to reduce our scope 1 and 2, so through this decarbonization strategy, by 50% by 2032, and our scope 3 by 30% by 2032. So it's a huge challenge, and we're actually partnering with Schneider, and we will start an employee and a supplier engagement program, because we need to involve our suppliers in the process. So the other thing which we do, and I want to really focus on it, is we have a very lean sustainability team. So whatever we do, we work in partnership with the whole stakeholders of our of the company, and we involve our employee to very practical initiatives like tree planting, beach cleaning, you know, native protecting the mangrove, for example, in the region. So giving them a chance and partnering with NGOs to give them a chance to also participate to the global strategy.
So with that in mind, I don't know, Manish, if you want to say a few words about you deal with biodiversity and biodiversity risk at Schneider.
Yeah, thank you. So great to be here in this panel and talk about Schneider Electric. For us, you know, our purpose is to enable everyone to bridge progress and sustainability for all. What we are doing is bringing digital solutions for sustainability and efficiency. That's what we do for our customers. Now, we also do it for ourselves. So we are, you know, very solidly committed to the path of net zero. Schneider Electric has, by 2050, we would like to be net zero in all the scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, and carbon neutral much before that in 2040. So, you know, as you've been mentioning, looking at the full scope of the value chain, which is very important. We also are an impact company, and in being an impact company, it is about, you know, you need to do well to do good, and vice versa, as well as you need to take everybody along. So I think that's something that while we have been doing. So for us, as part of being an impact company, we have taken, and also been signatory of the Carbon Pledge, we have taken 6 long-term commitments, which is around climate, resources, trust, generations, around equal and also local, because Schneider Electric operates in over 100 countries, and we would like to be very much local and making sure that whatever we do is impacting locally. You know, a couple of years ago, just like in Chalhoub Group, we have been developing what we call as a Schneider Sustainability Impact. Now that's around those 6 long-term impacts that I talked about. We've been defining matrices, and to the point that Hassan you were making, we start to measure how companies performing around different indicators, all around ESG, and some of them very specifically is how we are using by 2025. So we've kept steps before we reach 2050. The first milestone is in 2025. And here in some of those in the 11 indicators that I can share. So one is about reusing, using sustainable materials in 50% of everything that we produce by 2025. It is about removing single-use plastics as well as using recyclable cardboard by 2025, 100%. Also, it is, as we say that being an impact company, we cannot be driving this path of net zero by ourselves. We have to take everybody along. Key part of this is our suppliers, some of whom really need a lot of handholding and support from Schneider Electric. So the solutions that we bring, like you mentioned, to Chalhoub Group, we work also with Suez in some parts. We would like to bring the same solutions to our suppliers. And we have chosen 1,000 suppliers as part of this project to see how we can take them on the path of 50% reduction of their carbon footprint by 2025, which would of course help us, but also help them and make them part of this big collective mission that we have in the world. So those are some of the things that Schneider Electric is doing, and very happy to share more as the conversation goes along.
Yeah. So thank you. So Cyril, you heard that Hassan is we need to halt and reverse nature loss. Is there anything you can do at Suez in your daily operations to make progress?
Thank you, and very happy to be with you today. I would say Suez has spent 160 years of his history since the construction of the Suez Canal, protecting resources and biodiversity. And we have achieved a lot. 2.2 million tons of raw material recovered in 2022, 4 terawatt of energy produced from waste and wastewater, 4 million tons of CO2 emission avoided in 2022. This is a lot, but it's not enough. And we must step up our efforts. And the first step, I would say, is to be able to measure, to analyze, to calculate much better than what we do today our environmental footprint. The second point I would like to mention is innovation. How do we do to innovate with nature-based solutions in order to be able to reverse the biodiversity issue that we are all facing? And I'll take the example of what we call the dragonfly zones in a humid zone where, thanks to an advanced treatment, we recreate biodiversity while being part of a global treatment of the water. I would have many other examples, but back to you, Daniel.
I think we can pick up more examples when you talk about circular initiatives. And remember, circularity, the easiest way to see it is you want to reduce waste, you want to use products longer, and you want to regenerate nature. And I don't know, maybe Manish, if you want to come back to these circular initiatives, what are kind of the major levers you use for circularity at Schneider?
Sure. So, for us, in line with what we have chosen to do, which is get on this path, it starts with R&D and innovation being a key part of what we do. Every product design cycle that we start, we have, for starting some time back, we have started to look at the environmental impact of the full life cycle. So sure, it is about making sure that when we design the product, design and manufacture, we have lower carbon footprint, but it's also when the product is used across the life cycle. And in all of that, how the environmental impact is minimized. And this is what we call as an eco-design way within Schneider Electric. So we have been developing this internal process through which everything that we design goes through. So that's something that we have been doing. I would say that for us, the model for circularity, and clearly as we do that, circularity is a key part of that, is around value retention. So on one side, we have to see that everything that is going in is using less resources and is regenerative. So it's about recycling, repurposing, reduce by design, as well as refuse. Sometimes you don't choose things.
Right.
And then on the other side, it is about how we are able to, when we are using the products, to reuse, to repair, to refurbish and remanufacture. So that's kind of the model. And in this, if I bring some examples, we have as part of our service offering a program which we call as EcoFit. What it does is that you have your electrical installations. You know, they have been designed in the past to live a life of over 20 to 25 years. So we go inside and we see how, instead of replacing the full equipment, you are able to just replace some components and therefore extend the life. Of course, what is important is the integrity, the safety and the security of that electrical installation that needs to be preserved. So that is what you know, we have been doing. Say another example I could give is of reverse logistics. We have been working in France to collect back some of these gears. So, you know, we send products, they are, sometimes they don't work, sometimes they have been damaged. It's a way to collect that back. Again, recycle, repurpose it.
Right.
I think car industry is clearly far ahead in terms of, you know, extending the life. We are new in this, in a sense that we are developing offers that could be reused. And here, so on one side, while we are doing that, it also needs a change on the side of our customers to be able to accept these products, right? And see how we take them, you know, what are the commercial models around it that could be done. So it's something that we have to do collectively. So this process has started, now it's something that we need to be doing more.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating what you're saying. Like, you extend life of products and eventually they die, so it's going to be waste if it's not recyclable, and that's what you're taking care of in a way. And can you say something about circular waste streams or circular water streams?
Yeah, I believe that the global economy is still very linear. You take, you make, and you waste. And the circular economy has a direct impact on biodiversity. We need a shift in business model towards this global circular economy to tackle the natural loss. And somehow this is a pledge to all stakeholders. We increase your demands in terms of circular solutions. Ask for recycled materials. We are now able to produce recycled PET for all use of plastic. And an example on a plant that is being constructed in France with the loop technology. Ask for contracts where we are paid not by the extra cubic meter we treat, not by the extra ton we collect, but the extra cubic meter we save by the extra ton of waste that we recycle. Second point that is important, let's optimize the sites so that an existing site becomes a new resource. I will take the example of the wastewater treatment plant of Gabal El Asfar in Egypt, one of the largest of the world, 1 million cubic meter treated water per day. We are able to generate 65% of the internal electrical consumption thanks to the biomethane. And we are able to use all this treated water for agriculture, leaving natural resources free for other purposes. So those are some of the examples.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is great. We see that there are incentives, that there are deeper issues at stake to make the economy circular. And maybe, I don't know, Florence, if you want to say something of how you work on circularity at Chaloup Group.
Yeah, for sure. So as a retailer, we look at circularity in two aspects, the operations and the business model. From the operation point of view, it's very similar to what Schneider is doing. So we're looking at waste, recyclability, reusability. So just to give some examples, but also tackle it from another perspective. So for waste, of course, it's our responsibility to put the process, the equipment in place in our facilities. But I would like to emphasize on the importance of education. Because even if you have processes, equipment, etc., you need to have embark your, in our case, 15,000 people in the process, and the importance of partnerships. For us, we have more than 700 stores in the Middle East, so we need to partner with more developers, and the level of maturity and again process can differ. So we need to really align with our partners and also to track the performances, because I'm insisting also on data. Having this process in place are great, but then you need to check how you do, you know, the performance. We have some projects like visual merchandising, again with 700 stores, there's a lot of visual merchandising, so we conducted a project last year gathering all the visual merchandiser, and as you were saying about eco-design, to look at it from the start, you know, like how do you build visual merchandising so that it's reusable and recyclable in a good way. With this project, we were able to achieve 62% of VM reused. Then the other angle as a retailer, and that's a bit different because of the nature of our business, is circularity in our business model. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's our responsibility to put products and brands on the market which can be bought by people and citizens who are looking for sustainability. So I can give you 3 examples. One is level shoes, so luxury shoes and bags available in Dubai. Internal market study showed that 60% of luxury customers were ready in the UAE to buy second-hand or pre-loved items. So we developed this concept where our customers can buy and sell luxury shoes and bags online. And obviously, because it makes a business sense and it was a customer demand, it's doing extremely well, and we are looking at adding other category of products. Second one is Tanagra rental. So Tanagra is a luxury homeware and decoration concept where our customers can rent dinnerware, glassware, you know, when they host their guests. And the last one I would like to give is, and this is a great one, Christophe. So Christophe is a luxury silverware brand. And in France, we noticed that there was really an appetite for vintage items, you know, because Christophe is a brand which is 200 years old. So our team has been buying out products on the antiques market, you know, all over France, and refurbishing the products in our factory in Yainville and selling it in Paris. So first it was a pop-up store in Le Bon Marché in Paris, and it was so successful that now it's available online under the vintage collection and sold in some of our stores in France. So again, I just want to, so these two things. Developing a circular business model, yes, if it makes business sense. And second, it's our responsibility really as a retailer.
Right. So we see there's a lot of pressures to change the linear business model to something circular. I feel that the transition is too slow. I don't know, Hassan, what you think. Maybe regulation could be you know, a lever to accelerate the transition. Another question could be, you know, is there something we can learn from carbon markets? You start to put the price on emissions and things change. Now biodiversity doesn't really have this price tag yet. So can you see there's like a force by implementing new regulation to change the way businesses approach you know, this big problem?
Daniel, it's true. Regulation, in my opinion as well, is too slow. If we look at, though, the global response to COVID and how the world shut down to a perceived existential threat, it shows what strong governance and political governance can do in a very relatively short period of time. What we're talking about here is several problems. One is a perception of whether this really truly is a crisis. The second is how to ensure that there is acceptance that natural capital truly is an asset class. And these issues around the fact that what we're talking about here is a planetary crisis, I think there is very little scientific doubt about that. If we look at what according to NDCs, we are on track by 2100 for the planet to warm by up to 2.8 degrees Celsius. We've already warmed by 1.2, so that's almost more than a doubling of atmospheric heat. Within our lifetimes in the last 50 years, we've seen a decline of around up to 70% of global biodiversity. I mean, just that one statistic should be horrifying. But we're also talking about a major, major funding crisis. Global biodiversity funding is approximately $80 billion, but it's estimated that it's going to require $800 billion. And where does that money come from? If we look at subsidies which are going from government into activities which are harmful to biodiversity, those activities spend $500 billion. So you've got this major funding gap, and then you have this issue around, well, where does that come from? The majority of that biodiversity funding is actually coming from domestic spending. It's not even international spending. So there are a few different things that need to happen, and one of which is legislative. Because, for example, if those subsidies which are harmful to the environment were repurposed, and there will be backlash, if those were repurposed towards the environment, already we have a major part of the funding gap issue addressed. So in terms of the learning from the carbon markets, there's a lot that could be had. If we look at the voluntary carbon markets, despite the fact that they're small scale and they're volatile, they demonstrate one thing, which is don't wait for legislation. For those companies and those individuals who are impatient and want to try and have an impact, those mechanisms exist. It is imperfect, but the other thing that we've learned is, despite all the scrutiny on the voluntary carbon markets, is not to let perfection be the enemy of good. We've had discussions with some companies who've said, you know, we've seen some of the media pressure and we'd like to wait and see. But the problem is the world is projected to blow past 1.5 degrees Celsius in July 2029. That's less than 6 years from now. So how long do we wait and see before we try to attempt something and we iterate and we improve as we go along? So those are just some of the high-level
right.
points, really.
And I think it's very interesting to emphasize this parallel carbon and biodiversity. We started with carbon targets to kind of half emissions by 2030, get net zero by 2050, and in biodiversity, the common theme is halt and reverse nature loss by 2030 and become living in harmony with nature by 2050. So there's a strong parallel. And I don't know, maybe we can go one more time back to decarbonization, Manish. I don't know if you want to say something about Schneider Electric, how you work, what you achieved.
No, I think the two topics are clearly very closely linked, because everything we do about carbon has an impact on climate, which has an impact on biodiversity. What we say is, you know, that in order to, there are a couple of things that I want to talk. One is around a model that we look at decarbonization that corporations can use. We say that the model is about strategize, digitize, and decarbonize. So it first starts with how you are having your steps to understand where you stand in terms of your carbon footprint, where it is coming from, and then digital gives you the ability to measure that and to say how you are progressing when, you know, on the path of going towards 50% reduction, I think, which is the first step by 2030. And then it is about decarbonization. On decarbonization, which is clearly where things happen and where rubber meets the road, it is, our studies show that there are three ways looking at it, both from a supply side and demand side. So of course, we are here in Saudi, where clearly on the supply side, we talk about decarbonization, we hear about that. Renewables is what is going to make a significant reduction. The difference being that when you start to adopt renewables, it needs to do things differently. So it's all about a flexibility of the grid, because you're not just supplying energy from one side, but it's a bidirectional or multi-directional flow of energy. So you need to be able to manage that. Digital helps you do that. Then is about how we are able to reduce. Energy efficiency is clearly something that is the next step in reduction, and probably about 1/4 of the reduction of carbon can happen from energy efficiency. You know, the best watt is the negawatt, the energy that you don't consume.
Right.
And we, you know, again, through digital technologies, you're able to make that happen even more. And then it is about electrification, how you're able to electrify, because, you know, we heard that in other panels as well, that a lot of, carbon abatement is going to come not from the supply side, but from the demand side. And demand side, electrification of the demand side is something which is going to make significant reduction. We talk about EVs on the consumer side, you know, very efficient because you can directly feed power to, you know, to the wheels, and therefore they are much more efficient,
right,
while being also low in carbon. And then on the industrial side, it's all about process electrification, how you can electrify the processes and therefore make things cleaner. This is what I would say is one methodology of how we could be adopting and bringing it into our corporations. So this is what we bring to our customers. Then there are a few other things that we are doing in terms of innovation of the offers. We are in the electrical trade, and you know, we heard from Florence about, you know, all the great work that is happening on the B2C side, where you're talking about recycling and how we are repurposing. That's something that we need to adopt and take it on the industrial side. I think still too much to be doing there. But on innovation, what we have done is we use a lot of SF6 in terms of switching, you know. At Schneider Electric, we are committed to remove SF6 from the atmosphere from all our products by 2025. And in doing so, we have innovated green or offers which use air instead of SF6.
Okay.
You know, one kilogram of SF6 is 25,000 kilograms of equivalent of carbon. So once you don't use it, I mean, that's a deemed saving, right, that you have. So that's pretty significant in the atmosphere. So there are things that we are doing. We start to develop products, our switches and sockets around wiring devices, which are using single-use plastic, so customers can come and deposit in the stores, and we collect it, and then we are able to convert that into products then, you know, customers can use. So some of those product ranges have been launched. Still early days in some of those topics, but the key takeaway is that technologies exist today, especially on the demand side, that really need a lot more of adoption, which will help in carbon abatement, and therefore on the biodiversity impact of that carbon.
I think it's very interesting, and like, Cyril, if you want to come back to your example you gave us before, you were saying we shouldn't think about the price of an additional output, but we should think about how much can we save. Do you have other ideas on how to improve incentives in the
No, I believe
market?
It's really a change of paradigm that we need to implement. This business model under which we are paid for the extra cubic meter is no longer valid. We need to change. That. And I'll take the example of the city of Brive in France. The global goal of the city was to reduce by 21% the water that is taken from the natural environment. And our goal is, if we don't reach those 21%, we are not paid. So there is a huge commitment to get to that amount. And after 1 year of the contract, we are on the good path, meaning it is possible. And it is not by reducing the activity within the city. It is not by asking people not to develop their businesses, their economy. It's just by being more careful about the way we use the water. The second point I'd like to mention is about sobriety. Not sobriety meaning by decreasing the development of the economy, but sobriety about what we have today. How do we do to not to build the extra asset, but to optimize the assets that we have already built? The natural elements on the water side on that is all the water that is lost with the leaks. We believe that we are talking about 30 to 40% of the water produced that is just lost within the leaks. And it is possible to reduce that. It is possible to optimize the networks. And if we take the example of Macau in Asia, where we have reached a 7% what we call non-revenue water, the water that are lost in leaks. So it is possible to move into that direction. A second example about that sobriety. Innovation. We know that desalination is a key driver for the development of most of the region of the world because of the global warming. In 20 years, thanks to the innovation processes that we have put in place, we have been able to reduce by 45% the unit consumption of energy to produce 1 cubic meter. This is huge, and we have been able to do it thanks to the huge amount of money that has been put into the innovation.
So we have 5 minutes left, so we have to be short. And Florence, I know you're working in business organizations. Maybe you can say a few words about what you're doing in the region, and how you think organizations help to get traction on biodiversity.
For sure. So I think you're referring to the United Nations Global Compact. So I'm also part of the board in the UAE. So United Nations Global Compact is a UN organization supporting business to be responsible and sustainable in alignment with the 17 SDGs. So I think, in the region, there's 400 companies which are part of the Global Compact. What it does really, it helps each and every company to start their sustainability journey or their environmental strategy, or to go further and faster in that journey. So how do they do that? Access to resources, so they have an academy, and they have also very practical programs like Accelerator on climate action, SDG ambitions, where as a private sector you can join and see where you are as a company, build your environmental strategy, let's say, set KPIs, ambitious but realistic KPIs, etc. It also gives you an opportunity to have access to a platform to share some best practices by industry, so that you don't reinvent the wheel and again go faster. So I would agree when Cyril was saying what we do is good, but we need to accelerate, and that's and what you were saying about perfection is the enemy of good. That's really what UNGC is helping you to do. Like, start wherever you are, even you are a family business, a small business, medium, small enterprises, macro enterprises. It doesn't matter, but start now, and that's what really UNGC is helping you to do.
Mm-hmm. So if you think about business organizations, we also have the role of the NGOs. I don't know if you see them as a force, or if you think market-based forces are doing the job much better to get faster solutions to the biodiversity problem.
Absolutely. I think NGOs have a very important role. That can be in helping communities obtain their rights, research as partners. NGOs, and I spent half my career in the NGO sector, are not the best place to drive any kind of market-driven approach. That is best left to the market and to social enterprises. If we look at the biodiversity credit market, I haven't seen anything move this quickly outside of AI, and it hasn't even truly launched yet. It's projected to be worth potentially up to $30 to $40 billion by 2035. In contrast, it has taken the nature-based carbon markets, it's taken about 15 years for them to be valued at $2 billion. So what we're looking at here is a potential tool that over the next decade could create a new valuation for ecosystems. And if we look at, for example, the huge inequality issues that we talk about within countries, global north, global south, if these projects are designed well at scale, they potentially could be one of the greatest redistributors of wealth to some of the areas which have some of the highest poverty levels on the planet.
Thank you so much. Time is running. Just to wrap up this session, I'd like to warmly thank you for your great contributions. I think, and I hope, their thinking will inspire us to make progress on the biodiversity issue. I think we owe it to the future generations, to the planet. And thank you again for attending this session. I wish you a great rest of the conference, and I hope to see you around. Thank you again.
Thank you.